In my first video about dichotomies, I thought I would address a big one, which is the dichotomy of being a perfectionist and being free-flowing. It's funny because there is a stereotype of the artist as being both. In popular culture or media, you might see the artist type being portrayed as very particular and stubborn and detail-oriented and meticulous and specific about how things need to happen. And at the same time, you'll see the stereotype of the artist as loosey-goosey, go with the flow, kind of a space case, perhaps into new agey things, and being flighty and unreliable. And of course, artists span all personality types. However, I do believe that those who are embarking on creative work, on a creative journey, have to find this dance and flow in the midst of needing to be perfectionistic or needing to be free-flowing. I think my main point with any of these dichotomies that I'm going to be talking about is that for creative people, and I would argue for anybody really, it's not about being one or the other. It's about the dance between them. And yet for some reason, we tend to deify and compare ourselves to people who might seem to be one or the other. For example, you might one day look at somebody who seems like they have everything together and they're on top of it and organized and meticulous in their approach to their craft, and say to yourself, I need to be more like that. I need to pay attention to all the details and get it just right, and I'm not disciplined enough and I'm not pushing myself hard enough. And on another day, you might see somebody who is just so intuitive and going with their instinct on things and not being super structured and organized and yet creating beautiful work. And then you might compare yourself to that person and say, I wish I could be like that. I wish I didn't hold so tightly to things, and I wish I was just letting creativity flow through me. And I'm kind of here to say, yeah, I think both of those are right, but also stop beating yourself up in one direction or the other, because the dance between being a perfectionist and being free-flowing is the work of a creative person. So yeah, could you be more one or could you be more the other? Of course you can. And there are going to be times where you are called upon to lean more in one direction or the other. However, it's wild to me that we will use both sides of the dichotomy to beat ourselves up, and then we put ourselves in a no-win situation. And don't forget that both of these extremes can have not great consequences on your creative work. There are definitely people who have such high perfectionistic standards, and they're constantly judging the work that's out there and saying, I can't believe that's what they put out. I can't believe that's the kind of work that they got praise for. But because their standards are so high, they are so scared to then be judged by people like them that they don't even start their creative project, or they don't even finish their creative project because they don't want it to fall short of these high perfectionistic standards that nobody can reach. And it's really hard to tell that person, hey, maybe you should put some of your work out there and get some feedback, because they're so scared of that feedback coming and hitting them in the face and telling them all the ways that they have messed up and have done it wrong or didn't meet the standard. So that's one side of things. On the other side of things, being so free-flowing can sometimes also mean you never get started or you never finish, because you're still waiting for the moment to come. The inspiration will strike when it strikes. But maybe it's also a secret way of continuing to procrastinate and to put things off because you don't want to nail things down, you don't want to set things in stone. But at some point, decisions need to be made. At some point, you do need to say, this is the thing that I'm going to present. And sometimes it takes somewhat arbitrary deadlines to help get that motor going. And don't forget the business side of things. Now, there's a lot you could say about the problems within the business of art, but the fact is, if you don't have a website, how will people find you? If you don't engage on social media, what are the ways that you are going to reach the people that you want to reach? And if there are organizations that you do want to be working with, but you're not actively looking for those ways to set up meetings or to network with folks, then that just continues to remain a dream in your head. Now, one thing to watch out for with any of these dichotomies is also the perfect middle, because people will talk about, I need to find the perfect balance. And that's why I called it a dance, because I don't think there is such a thing as the perfect balance either. That's just setting yourself up for another perfectionism. I think what is called for is responding to what each moment is asking of you, which I know even that can turn into a perfectionism thing, meta. But it's being able to, if you are leaning too much on the perfectionistic side, let go when it seems like people or signs are pointing you to needing to let go. Or if you're leaning too much on the side of keeping things so loose that you're not necessarily setting up a next step, a clear next step for yourself, and signs are pointing you to, hey, maybe it's time to actually move forward on this project. It's that skill of being able to respond in that moment and not idealize one extreme over the other, and definitely not to beat yourself up if you're not meeting those extremes yourself. As with a lot of these videos, I say easier said than done, but where I think these dichotomies are helpful is sometimes when we're feeling stuck and we don't know why, it's good to use dichotomies as a sort of reflection tool and to see, well, maybe am I leaning too much on one over the other, and how might I start to extract myself from the extremes of perfectionism or the extremes of just being too free-flowing, and then hopefully starting to take steps to break free and dance somewhere in the middle again. And kind of the final thing I'll say is I do believe sometimes you will go through seasons where you are in either extreme. There might be a time period where you just have to be very perfectionistic. And I know that's not a palatable thing to say right now after this pandemic where we've all learned to kind of loosen up a bit. But there will be times when there is a deadline or people aren't responding to you in the ways that you need for your work to get done. And like, don't be an asshole about it, but sometimes you got to, take control of your work. And you might also go through a season where you need to just let go, or you need to just stop, slow down, and just see where things take you. And you might appear lazy, and you might appear apathetic, irresponsible even. But if you know that you're in that season, then live there. And that's part of the dance too, is sometimes you will dance more on one side or the other. For me, it all kind of comes back to this idea of flowing with what needs to be happening at any given moment. But yeah, maybe one takeaway could be no more beating yourself up for being perfectionistic or for being too lazy. Instead of beating yourself up over it, maybe you can just ask yourself some good questions on what you can do to dance a little bit more. All right, hopefully I didn't confuse the crap out of you. If I did, let me know in the comments below, or share your own thoughts on this dance that we do between these two extremes. And I'll be back with another dichotomy video next time.